From the book of Daniel, chapter 2. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partially clay, partially iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, in the manner you saw the iron mixed with the clay. Whereas the toes of the feet were partially iron and partially clay, so part of the kingdom shall be strong, and part shall be broken. Whereas you saw iron mixed with clay, they shall mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. Greetings, and welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Website can be found at scriptureandprophecy.com. That's where you go to find the archives, and that's where you go to support this mission of truth. Today, we are resuming our study in the book of the prophet Daniel in our series called Daniel and the Sovereignty of God. And every chapter, you're going to see the sovereignty of God and how his hand is on Daniel and upon his friends and how things are working out and God's plan is working out perfectly. And even when things seem to be going sideways, they're actually not. And today is a perfect example of this very thing. King Nebuchadnezzar has this dream of this image. Troubles him deeply. He calls upon all the Chaldeans, the wise men, the sorcerers, and magicians of Babylon to interpret the dream, but he doesn't want any nonsense from them. He wants them to prove that they actually have this ability to do this. And so he won't even tell them what the dream is. He says, you tell me what the dream is and the interpretation. Of course, they're unable to do this. And the king says, all right, I want all the wise men of Babylon executed. And that's the order that comes forth from the king. Problem for Daniel is he is included in this group known as these wise men. That, if you remember, Daniel and his friends in the first chapter, they're brought in and they're put through the schooling and all the things to become part of this group. And this is where God will intervene, and Daniel will be a perfect example of what it means to be a godly man in the midst of Babylon, in the midst of a very terrible future, at least as far as it looks at this very moment. But we'll see how he handles this, and may it be an example to us all. We're going to also deal with this image. It's very clear what this image represents historically. The church fathers are very clear about what it means. There's really no confusion or any question about what it is and what nations it represents for the first 1900 years of church history. The confusion only comes in modern times with modern dispensational end-time prophecy teaching. We'll deal with that. And then I will end today by reading a devotional from my book, and you'll understand why when we get to it. The End of Days, a 30-day devotional that I released in the year 2020. All right, let's take a look at today's scriptures. Open up your hearts and see what the Word of God has to say to us this morning. The book of the prophet Daniel, chapter 2, verse 1. Now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, he had a dream. His spirit was deeply troubled, and his sleep departed from him. So the king gave orders to summon the enchanters, the magicians, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, to tell the king his dreams. Thus they came and stood before the king. Then the king said to them, the king had a dream, and my spirit is deeply troubled, to know the meaning of the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in the Syrian language. O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will tell you its interpretation." The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, "The dream has departed from me. If you do not make known the dream and its interpretation known to me, you shall be destroyed, and your houses will be plundered. But if you do make the dream and its interpretation known to me, you will receive all kinds of gifts from me and be honored by me. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation." But they answered a second time and said, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will tell you its interpretation." The king answered them, "Truly, I know you are trying to gain time, because you see that the thing has departed from me. Therefore, if you do not tell me the dream, I will know that you have agreed beforehand to give my dream a false and corrupt interpretation. So before any more time passes by, tell me my dream. Then I will know that you can tell me its interpretation." The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There is no man on earth who can make known the king's dream, and there is no great king or ruler who asks such a thing as this of any enchanter, magician, or Chaldean. The question you ask, O king, is difficult and above expectation. For there is no man who can tell the king his dream except the gods, whose dwelling is not with any flesh." Then the king, angry and furious, commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. He decreed that the wise men be put to death, and sought for Daniel and his friends to kill them. So please note, here we are. He's had the dream. It's departed from him. He wants an interpretation. He feels like they're just trying to buy themselves time, asking him questions and refusing to give him the interpretation. And in the king's mind, hey, if you truly have this power, then you should be able to do this. But they are right about one thing. No man can do this, right? The only one who could go as far as to tell you what your own dream was and its interpretation would be God himself. And that is how this actually turns out. God will be the one who reveals the dream. The commandment, though, has gone out. Execute all the wise men. And Daniel is about to find this information out. Let's pick back up in the story, verse 14. Then, with the counsel and intelligence, Daniel spoke to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who went out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He asked him for what reason the bitter decree had come from the king. Then Arioch, the king's official, made the reason known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and entreated the king to give him time, and he would tell the king his dream and its interpretation. Then Daniel went to the house and made the matter known to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And they sought mercies from God, from the God of heaven, concerning this mystery, that Daniel and his friends might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So please note, great crisis has come. Hey, they're sending out officials to execute you. Those are some pretty serious terms, right, that you're dealing with? Like that would be enough to make any of us panic. But what's Daniel's response? Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they seek the mercy of God. That is their response. They seek the mercies of God, that God might reveal to them this impossible thing. Continuing on. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision during the night. By the way, please note, this may come as a shock to some of you, and some of you may even scoff, and that's fine. But I had a vision myself in 2012, which ultimately led to me doing this podcast for the last 10, 11 years. The book that I'm going to be reading from at the end of the broadcast here, the End of Days 30-Day Devotional, I actually open the book up. The introduction is called I Saw a Vision. And so if you have a copy of that, you can check that out. I think I've talked about it on podcasts before, but probably not. But I say that just to say that this is not something that is... and look, I get that it's hard to believe. But it's not something that God no longer does. And I can testify with great confidence of that. Anyway, that was just a side note. So Daniel receives a vision by night, and the vision is the answer to the question, this mystery about what Nebuchadnezzar's dream was and its interpretation. Let's continue on. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision during the night. After that, Daniel blessed the God of heaven, saying, "May God's name be blessed from now on and forever, for wisdom and understanding to him. He changes times and season. He appoints kings and removes them. He gives wisdom to the wise and insight to those who have skill. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what it is in the darkness, and the light is with him. I give thanks and praise to you, O God of my fathers, for you have given me wisdom and power. And now you have made known to me what I asked from you, for you made known the king's vision to me." So please note, I entitled the series, "The Sovereignty of God." Daniel's pointing this out, right? You appoint kings, you remove them. You give wisdom and insight to those who have skill. You reveal the deep hidden things. All of this is part of God's plan. Verse 24. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king appointed to put to death the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the interpretation to the king." Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king to stand, and said to him, "I found a man among the children of the captivity of Judah, who will tell the interpretation to the king." And the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, "Can you tell me the dream I saw and its interpretation?" And Daniel answered before the king and said, "The mystery which the king demanded to be told to the king cannot be revealed by wise men, magicians, enchanters, and diviners, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what must come to pass in the last days. Your dream and visions and your head upon your bed was this. As for you, O king, thoughts came to you while you were on your bed as to what must happen after this, and he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what must take place. But as for me, the mystery was not made known to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for the sake of making known the interpretation to the king, that you might know the thoughts of your heart." Please note, did you catch that Daniel never once mentioned himself? Yes, I can tell you the interpretation because I have this special relationship with God. By the way, anytime somebody starts doing that, I turn down the volume. The minute you make it about you and how you're special and you've got a special relationship with the God, and the Lord made this known to me type of thing, I'm out. I'm already done because this is about you. It's not about God or any wisdom that God has given you. What does Daniel do? He says, "I actually have no power to do this. I'm actually not wiser than anyone. It's just that God wanted to make something known to you, O king." Right? He made it about the actual event itself. God gave the king a vision. Here's the interpretation. God, in his great mercy, is letting you know the interpretation. And he only made it known to me so that you can know. This is the proper posture and attitude. This is a man of true faith. This is the attitude of someone who's actually heard from God. Continuing on. As for you, O king, you saw and beheld a great image. The image was very large and its appearance excellent. It stood before you, and its vision was fearful. The image had a head made of fine gold, and its hands, chest, and arms were made of silver, and its stomach and thighs of copper. Its legs were iron, its feet were partially iron and partially clay. You saw while a stone was cut out of a mountain without hands, and struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and ground them to powder. Then at once the clay, the iron, the copper, the silver, and the gold were like dust from the summer threshing floor. And a great fierce wind blew them away, and their place was not to be found. Then the stone that struck the image became a great mountain, and filled the earth. So please note, before we get to the interpretation, we have this image. It's got a head of gold. It's got a chest and arms made of silver. Its stomach and thighs are made of copper. And then the legs are made of iron, and the feet and the toes are partially made of iron and partially made of clay. This is the image. Then this stone hits it and crushes it, and the stone grows out through all the world. Okay. Honestly, if you don't have any outside information, and you don't have any modern day prophecy watcher stuff being fed to you, you could very easily kind of figure out at least what the stone is, right? The stone would be the kingdom of God that smashed the kingdoms and has grown throughout the world over time. And this is the interpretation of the church fathers, the interpretation of basically every Bible commentator for 1900 years. I'm going to get to all of that here in just a minute. Let's listen to the rest of Daniel's interpretation of what everything represents. Verse 36. This is the dream, and we will tell you its interpretation before the king. You, O king, are King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given a strong, mighty, and highly regarded kingdom. In every place where the children of men live, as well as the wild animals in the field and the birds of heaven. He put them all in your hand and made you lord of them all. You are the head made of gold. But after you another kingdom shall arise, inferior to yours. Then a third kingdom of copper, which shall rule over the earth. Then a fourth kingdom as strong as iron shall arise. And as much as the iron breaks into pieces and subdues everything, so also it shall break in pieces and subdue all things. Whereas you saw the feet and the toes, partially clay and partially iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, in the manner you saw the iron mixed with the clay. Whereas the toes of the feet were partially iron and partially clay, so part of the kingdom shall be strong, and part of it shall be broken. Whereas you saw iron mixed with clay, they shall mingle with the seed of men, but they shall not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. So please note, I'll give you the historical interpretation here in just a second, and we will be addressing the mingled with the seed of men part before we wrap up as well. Let's just finish the story here. Verse 44. Then in the times of those kings, the God of heaven will raise up a kingdom, and it shall never be destroyed. This kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it will break in pieces and crush all these kingdoms, and it will stand forever. Whereas you saw stone cut out of the mountain with hands, it ground to powder the clay, the iron, the copper, the silver, and the gold. Thus the great God has made known to the king what must come to pass after this. The dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded sacrifices and drink offerings to be made to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, Truly your God, he is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, who reveals mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery. Then King Nebuchadnezzar exalted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and set him over the whole province of Babylon, and over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel also petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the provinces of Babylon. But Daniel was in the king's palace. So let's deal with first. We talk about the sovereignty of God. It looked bad, right? The king's sending out everybody to kill all the wise men, which includes Daniel and his friends. But the end result? Daniel is exalted to the highest position in Babylon, given many gifts. Even Daniel's friends are exalted, and they're made rulers over all the affairs and provinces of Babylon, which will also kind of explain why the jealousies develop from the other people of Babylon, the other people within like the cabinet, if you will, the king. They're going to start conspiring to try to get Daniel and his friends in trouble. It's no surprise. I mean, look what just happened. Daniel was exalted and given all these gifts. No question that jealousy arises. But it also demonstrates that even when things look really bad, God can and does work them out for the good of his people. All right, let's get to the image. I'm going to give you... Now, listen. You know that I have the belief that prophecy is given, and it has a place for the people it's given to. And I believe most Bible prophecy has been fulfilled in that manner. However, I believe in dual fulfillments. And I think there's several examples within the scriptures. We could just do the abomination of desolation. It's happened like 2 or 3 times in history where we could clearly point to that. I give an example of sometimes the scriptures say something and it doesn't even seem prophetic, and then it has a prophetic fulfillment in the future. One example would be, we go to the Old Testament, you go to the Torah, and God says, "Out of Egypt I've brought my son." Called my son, talking about the Exodus. But then when we go to the Gospel of Matthew says that situation where Mary and Joseph take Jesus into Egypt, and then the king dies, and the angel appears to Joseph and says, "You can return. The person who's trying to kill your child is gone." Matthew says that's the fulfillment of that phrase, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." Dual fulfillments. What we have here is this image. It's very clear what it means historically. We can very easily find all these kingdoms and all these situations in the past. I will deal with the mingled with the seed of men as a both past and yet future fulfillment. So let's start with the image real quick. This is what's been clearly believed and taught. So you have the head of gold, which Daniel already tells us is Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. The silver chest and arms represent a 245-year supremacy of the Medo-Persians, beginning with Cyrus in 539 BC. The stomach and thighs of copper represent Alexander the Great and his Greek Empire, established about 330 BC. Next came the brutal Roman Empire, represented by the 2 legs of iron. And according to Hippolytus, the feet of iron and clay correspond with the 10 horns in Daniel's vision and represent the 10 nations after Rome. Just as the stone struck the feet and overtook these governments, so the gospel spreads throughout all the nations of the Gentiles. And this stone, which is the church, becomes a great mountain as the gospel fills the earth. That's pretty much a unanimous interpretation throughout history. Now, Rome broke up into pieces and became 10 nations, or like 10 little countries. That's what those 10 feet or 10 toes represent. Some of them were strong, they were clay or iron. Some of them were really weak, representing the clay. Rome also became weakened at that time by a mixture of nations. And that was part of the weakness, and that doesn't mingle together. And so that was always been the interpretation of the mingled with the seeds of men. Rome allowed it to be mixed and infiltrated, if you will, by various nations and ideas and social ways of thinking and religions and all these things, and it became unstable. Sound familiar? Sounds like Western civilization today. This is why you see Western civilization crumbling. The foundations of our religious views, social views, governmental views have all been broken into pieces. Why? The same reason. Now, let's talk about the mingled with seed of men for a minute. There's the historical interpretation. Let me give you a suggestion. Something that I've been talking about for a long time, well over 10 years at this point. You can find videos all over the YouTube channel where I talk about this. And 6 years ago, I released a book, or I wrote a book. I guess I released it 5 years ago. A little devotional, The End of Days, 30-day devotional. It has 30 devotions or commentaries, however you want to look at them, all dealing with an end times topic. Something that I've just seen coming for a very long time is the genetic manipulation of human beings. And we already see this with our food supply and with everything else. I'm going to read the devotional to you here in just a minute. But just in case you think this is something that's not still happening, let me just read you 4 headlines from just the last couple of weeks. If you pay attention, this is every month, there's a half a dozen of these at least. Here's some headlines. Scientists create world's largest lab-grown chicken nugget, complete with artificial veins. Scientists wants to grow spare human bodies in order to revolutionize medicine. Headline number 3. Chinese scientist responsible for gene editing babies seeks to make comeback. If you remember several years ago, and I actually addressed this in the devotion I'm going to read to you here in a minute, this whole gene editing babies thing was really on the rise. And then recently, you've probably seen this by now, scientists say they have resurrected the dire wolf. So apparently, they've brought back this wolf that was extinct through DNA and stuff like that. I'm not going to read the articles. I just want to point out that this is still something that's very much on the rise. Let me end by reading you this short devotional. Again, you can pick this up on Amazon if you want. It's very inexpensive. I don't actually make money from this at all. I just wanted to get these thoughts down years ago. And you can find videos on these topics all over the YouTube channel, like I said. Here's the devotional. It's more of a commentary, but it's very short. The title of it, it's chapter 13, Genetic Modification and Artificial Intelligence in the Last Days. To some, the idea of genetically modified humans might seem completely outlandish. But to those who have studied in depth the days of Noah and are paying attention to current trends, this has been a long time coming. Our media and technology industries continue to report and boast about developments in genetics. Even more so, they are demonstrating their ability to not only genetically modify humans, but to merge them with artificial intelligence. These are some interesting, albeit scary times we are living in. I've told my podcast listening audience for years, in your lifetime, you're going to see non-human individuals walking around. I'm referring to people who have either been genetically altered from God's original design or people who have merged physically with some kind of artificial intelligence. Honestly, we shouldn't be shocked by this concept. After all, we have genetically modified animals, plants, and food, which is now part of our everyday life. It has been this way for many years. In fact, if you're trying to eat clean, natural, unaltered, non-GMO food here in the United States, then you're going to have to go to a health specialty market, and it's going to be expensive. Why? Because there just isn't much food left in the food supply which hasn't been tampered with. Not only is society screaming to us that this is coming, but the scriptures also tell us to be expecting this. The prophet Daniel, when describing the coming world kingdoms, tells us something very interesting about the last kingdom from Daniel 2, verse 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with murky clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men? I don't know about you, but this sounds a lot like manipulation of the human being. It could be a form of genetic modification or maybe even a merging of man with artificial intelligence. Either way, Daniel tells us it's not going to go well, and they will not cleave to one another. Another interesting passage, which lends itself to this thinking, comes from the Apocrypha. which was included in the King James Bible from 1611 through most of the 1800s before being suspiciously removed. I have an old King James Bible in my library from the 1800s. It once belonged to a church in New York. Sorry, I lost my place. As did most of the Bible from this time. It has the apocryphal text included in it. I'm referring to the apocryphal book 2nd Esdras, a book filled with very interesting and prophetical text. However, there is one particular verse which always jumps out at me and causes me to pause and think. 2nd Esdras chapter 5 verse 8. There shall be confusion also in many places, and the fire shall be oft sent out again, and the wild beasts shall change their places, and minstrous women shall bring forth monsters. Also in 2nd Esdras we read, chapter 6 verse 21, and the children of a year old shall speak with their voices. The women with child shall bring forth untimely children of 3 or 4 months old, and they shall live and be raised up. Women shall bring forth monsters. Children will live, being born as early as 3 months, and will talk? I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few years, or maybe even sooner, we see it normalized for parents to have their babies genetically altered before birth. Society may spin it as a good thing, a way for children to be born free of disease. Parents will try to pick what color eyes their children will have, or how tall, intelligent, athletic, or artistic they may be. However, if we take time to study what happened during the days of Noah, if we study the apocryphal text, then we will see that tampering with God's creation leads to horrific events, followed by great judgment. I believe genetic modification and artificial intelligence will play a huge role in these last days, and we better pay attention to those trends. Not only pay attention, but more importantly, avoid being part of it. May God give us wisdom and have mercy on our souls. And that, my friends, is how I will end today's study. I pray that you've been blessed. Thank you for listening. Please pray for the podcast. And if you have the means, willing, and are able, please consider supporting the mission of truth by going to scriptureandprophecy.com, clicking on the donate support tab at the top. Peace and grace be with all of you. And until next time, God bless.